That evening, we sat across from each other at the same dinner table where we'd once planned vacations, laughed over silly things, drunk wine on Friday nights, argued about movies. I don't even remember what was on the plate. Only her face, her eyes, seemingly empty. And the phrase that made me feel like I was collapsing in on myself. But it all started long before that dinner. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but in some years I truly believed we had something real. I loved her, not like in the movies, with roses and serenades, but simply, honestly, every morning, every routine, every touch. Love like washing the dishes for someone because they're tired. Like waiting for them to come home from work, even when tense. Like knowing how they take their coffee, but asking anyway just to hear their voice. She wasn't just my wife. She was my home, my compass. The person who made me want to be better. But over time, I didn't notice exactly when something began to change. Imperceptibly, like water seeping through a crack in a wall. We still lived together, still shared one blanket, one refrigerator, but it started to feel like we were in different rooms. Her eyes began to evade mine. Her footsteps started to sound different. Her words became shorter, quieter, flatter. I tried not to make a big deal of it. Told myself it was just a phase, that we were tired, it would pass, everyone goes through it. But it seemed I was the only one still holding on to our us. I was the only one who believed it could be fixed. We stopped taking photos together, stopped spontaneously hugging in the kitchen, stopped even arguing properly. Not because we agreed, but because we stopped caring. Pain doesn't arrive all at once. It gathers from little things, from how you aren't noticed when you come home, from how she first stopped making me breakfast and then simply stopped being there in the morning, from how you try to snuggle at night and in response, only get a cold back. And then there isn't even a back, just emptiness, because you're already sleeping on different sides of the bed, almost in different worlds. And then the dinner. An ordinary dinner, it seemed. No occasion, no guests, no particular expectations. I sat across from her, as usual. We ate in silence. And when she uttered that phrase, her voice was so calm, as if she were discussing the weather forecast. And I froze. Something clenched in my chest, as if a nail had been driven into my heart. And it wasn't anger. It wasn't even resentment. It was emptiness. Absolute, soundless, paralyzing. I didn't know how to react. Didn't know what to do with my hands. Didn't know why I was breathing. I got up from the table and left. Just walked out of the apartment without shouting, without words, because words no longer held any meaning. I walked the streets, not feeling my legs. The wind whipped my face, and I thought, this must be how someone feels who was forgotten during surgery. The body is already open, but the anesthesia didn't work. You feel everything, but you can't scream. Some time has passed since then. I don't know how much. I stopped counting. A calendar isn't needed when days stop being different from one another. I live alone. Not because I want to, but because I can't do otherwise. I haven't started new relationships. I'm not looking. Because even now, remembering her, I feel something within me stayed forever at that dinner, in that room, in that phrase. I don't blame her. Maybe she was hurting too. Maybe she didn't mean to wound me, but she did. With one sentence, she shattered everything we'd built over years. I started waking up earlier and earlier. Just lay in the dark, listening to her breathing, staring at the ceiling, thinking, where did it all go? Were those years an illusion? Or maybe love just has an expiration date and we'd reached the end of ours? On weekends, we barely spoke. I tried suggesting things. Go to the countryside, see a movie, pick a restaurant. She nodded, agreed, politely, without fire. But as soon as we were somewhere together, I felt she was somewhere far away, not looking at me, not thinking about me, answering briefly, as if only physically present. I blamed myself. Maybe I'd become boring. I started to change. began cooking dinners, bringing flowers for no reason, listening to her silence. But it was all in vain. With every attempt, I felt less like a husband and more like an actor playing at domestic bliss before an empty auditorium. We stopped saying, "I love you" out loud, and then we stopped even thinking it. And yet, I hoped, even then. After her phrase, after my departure, deep down, like the last idiot, I believed she would write, would call, would say it was all said in the heat of the moment. But days passed, and the silence only grew. I returned to our apartment a week later, just to get my things. The key still fit the lock. Inside, everything was in its place, like a museum of a life gone by. My mug was still on the table. Her towel hung on the hook in the bathroom. Everything inside felt too alive to seem real, as if she would walk in any moment and ask where I'd been. But no one came. I packed quickly, shoved clothes into a bag, not even folding them. The little things, photos, books, letters, I left untouched. Couldn't take them, left them behind. As if trying to preserve something, anything, that might remind her of me. A foolish hope. Several months passed. I started writing, not publishing anything, just filling notebooks, one after another. I checked her social media less often. At first, every night. Then I realized, if you have to convince yourself to look, you no longer live there. I see her face in my dreams. Sometimes she's silent. Sometimes she looks at me with sadness, never smiled. And I understand it's not her, it's my projection. My brain desperately trying to complete the conversation that never happened. Once, I accidentally walked into a cafe we used to go to. Everything was different, the decor, the tables, the music. But the smell of coffee, the warm light, everything resonated inside me so sharply that my legs buckled. I sat at our table, looked out at the street like she used to. No one texted me. I wasn't in a hurry to be anywhere. I just was. And in that I felt something new. Not relief, not hope, but silence. Not the kind that destroys, but the kind that releases. I understood. I still love her. But love isn't always about being together. Sometimes it's about letting go with gratitude. Not for everything being good, but for it having been at all. A year passed. I didn't count the days on purpose, but the date remained somewhere inside. Not as a wound, as a scar. Run your finger over it, and you remember how it all began. What was said, what wasn't. And everything that happened after. I started traveling to other cities on weekends, looking at streets where no one knew me, drinking coffee with strangers at neighboring tables. And at some point I realized I was living again. Not surviving, not observing life from the outside, but from within. I met other people, talked with some, walked with others, but I didn't rush. You can't build something new on ruins if you haven't cleared the debris. Once, I saw her on the street. Across the road, she was laughing, wearing a light coat I hadn't seen before. I didn't approach, just watched, and felt she was happy, or at least looked like it. And that, perhaps, was enough. I walked on, without looking back, without regret, because I understood I had become different too. Wounded, but alive. Quiet, but whole. I didn't get answers, but I don't need them anymore. The important thing isn't understanding why it happened. It's what you did with it afterward. I live. And that is already something